you. Welcome to Babbles Travelling Yarns. This is going to be a questions and answers podcast because I have done absolutely no knitting this week. So while I am going to be answering some questions that I asked you on a question sticker on Instagram, I'm going to be knitting a pair of socks, very small socks that have been taking forever. These are Arnie and Carlos, I think it's Summer Nights colorway, in my Hide and Hammer little pocket bag. Has a little catch. I'm not wearing anything with belt loops on today, but so I'm just going to leave it on the floor. So it's been a long time since I did any sort of answering any questions, which is kind of rude. But I thought it was a great idea to do it because I do want to get a podcast out. I want to get back to getting a podcast out every week. But sometimes I just don't have time to, oh gosh, I put this on thinking it was going to be like, it's going to be a little bit cold. But the second I start talking, I'm like, it's too hot. So what am I saying? Hi, my name is Grace. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. You can follow me on Instagram as Vanna Willemeel, which is my personal channel, which is where everything goes. I also have a Babbles Yarns page, which is for all of my hand-dyed yarn, which I'm not doing much of at the moment. I'm focusing on other parts of my business. And I am based in Ireland. I'm based in Limerick in Ireland, actually, which is the southwest coast of Ireland. Now, I am going to hopefully do a separate video on, I get a lot of questions about the best places to go when visiting Ireland. And I really want to do a specific video for that. So I will pop that. I will be making that fairly soon. So as I'm going to be chatting away, I'm just going to be knitting as well because I have not had a chance to knit and I am getting severe withdrawal symptoms. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just kind of really want to knit, but I'm struggling casting on. And after doing the D-stash there last week, there's still a few skeins up. There's only about 5 or 6, around 5 things on the Instagram, the Babbles D-stash Instagram, if you want to go over and have a look. Extremely discounted yarn, which is in perfect condition. But after doing that, I had this like renewed desire to like just cast on everything. But I have cast on inability because I'm just indecisive about what I want to make. So I'm just going to make these socks. That's going to solve my problem there. So I put up a few questions. I put up a question sticker on my Instagram stories. It's still on there now, actually. So if I don't get to your question, it's because I'm filming while you're asking the question. I think there's about 4 more hours left on it. So if a question goes up later, I might answer it in the next podcast. So do please pop over there and ask me a question if you want. I'll do my best to answer. So I'm just in the bit where I'm decreasing on the gusset, which is not great to be knitting on, but now I'm onto the round where it's just straight across, so that's fab. So I've got a couple of questions here and I don't know how many I'll get through. There's some which are knitting craft related and there's some that are life related. So I'm probably going to do one and then the other and then one and then the other. Yeah. So the first one, I think, I get asked this a lot and that's why I didn't put a name to the person who asked the question. I get asked this a lot. So I thought it would be a great place to start. So my Instagram name is Vanna Willemeel, VANAWILLMEIL. Where did that come from? I get that all the time. Okay, so it's a kind of a funny story and a kind of a not funny story and a kind of a silly story. So it comes from an ex-boyfriend of mine who was really into Elvish, loved Elvish, obsessed with Liv Tyler. And this is around the time where Lord of the Rings was out, you know, and everything. So he learned Elvish. It's incredibly nerdy. I was nerdy as well. I'm still pretty nerdy. So yeah, so he called me Vanna Williamil, which means beautiful. Actually, he actually called me Vanna Williamil because it means beautiful daughter of William, which is very sweet. And my father's name is William. However, I misspelled it and put it into, I can't remember what I started. I think it was on DeviantArt when I was, yeah, that's when I first used that name, and it was just always available. So I was like, perfect. So that's where that comes from. I misspelled a name that an ex gave me. And it's just stuck with me, really. I was thinking last year quite a lot about changing the name to be more like Brandy, but a lot of people know me as Vanna Williamil, so I think it's fine. And it's also really funny because I cannot spell my father's name. A lot of people call me, if they see me on Instagram Live or anything, they call me Vanna, and I'm totally fine with that because it means beautiful. So cute. So that is the first question, which I get quite a lot. So the next question that I got was about my helical knitting tutorial, and I have actually I just got over 12,000 subscribers, and I completely put all of that onto that jogless join helical knitting video. A lot of people were recommending it, and I really thank every single person who did, because it's brought an awful lot of people to my platform, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So, but I get the same questions over and over and over again on my helical knitting video. What it's used for, can it be used for this, can it be used for that? Helical knitting can really only be used for in the round single stripes. I get people asking all the time, can I do this flat? No, it doesn't work for flat unless you knit the object that you want in the flat, unless you knit it in the round and then steek it and then cut it up the side, which you could totally do, totally possible to do. I'm thinking that would be a really lovely way to do a little baby blanket, actually. So, but you can't just go back and forth using that technique. It doesn't work. It only works in the round. I've got a lot of people asking if it works for stripes that are more than one row long wide. No, you will get little floats in between the transition rows if you want to do that. There are other ways that you can get like a jogless join, like pulling up the leg of one stitch before you change, but that's not what helical knitting is, not what it's about. So what helical knitting is really good for is knitting in the round, alternating skeins in the body of a sweater or in sleeves or in a cowl. It's also really good for making little baby hats, which you want to do like little stripes, you know. It's really good for single stripes in the round or alternating very similar looking skeins. Say I have, you know, 4 of these colour skeins, and I want to, and they're hand dyed. Actually, these are hand dyed. These are hand dyed. So and I want to blend them together so that they all look very similar. Now, this is a Le Bien Aimé, so it's totally different, but I think it will work quite well with these if I stripe it subtly. So it works very, very, very well for blending the colours together so that you don't get a sharp line when you change. Because if you can see, this skein is a lot lighter than this skein. So if I was to just knit straight down and then change colour and then continue knitting with this colour, I get a sharp line across. And so it's really good for alternating its skein, alternating in the round. Now, an awful lot of people ask me, would it be good for patterns? A lot of people have used it in a patterned jumper. what it is you're knitting every single round. Yes, you're slipping stitches, but those stitches that you slip are knit on the next round. So as you're doing a pattern, you just you skip that little bit, skip those stitches, and you move 3 stitches on in your pattern, and you then continue to knit that. So it just takes a little bit of mind jiggling. And now unfortunately I get a lot of people saying, how do I do this on this particular sweater? And I'm like, I can't rewrite the pattern for you using helical knitting. I can't do that. It's a little bit of fiddling and it's a little bit of figuring out, but it's totally doable. And if you're stuck, you don't need to skip 3 stitches. You can skip one stitch or 2 stitches. You know, you don't need to always stick to the 3-stitch rule. I find that if you're just knitting in stockinette up and down the body, slipping 3 stitches evens out the slipping. So a lot of people said, oh, you don't have to have 3 stitches, you can do it with 1 stitch. And yes, that's true. I do find those slipping 3 stitches tends to even out. When I tried it with 1 stitch, I got a little kind of a jog up the back of my my jumper. It kind of came up and around. So you can see it a little bit if you slip 1 stitch. It depends on your tension. But to even it out, to make it a bit easier and to make sure that you get it right, or to get it as good as possible, slipping 3 stitches is grand, you know. I mean, it might slow you down by like a row at the end, but it's, you know, it's all just knitting, so it's fine. I'm slow anyway, so. What else? A lot of people, you see, it's funny, everyone asks the same questions and I've answered all the questions on the comments. So if you're going over to look at my video and you have a question, just have a read through the comments first and see if I've already answered them. I got to a stage where I was answering the same questions over and over again and I just stopped because I was like, I just can't, like, there's so many comments on that video, I couldn't keep up. So, and I had answered them in a previous comment, you know, so. And then there was other questions asking me to rewrite patterns, basically rewrite patterns, and I was like, I'm not doing that. There was a good question actually. So say you were alternating skeins in a jumper. Let's pretend this is a jumper. You were alternating skeins in a pullover, if you don't understand what jumper is in Irish UK terms. You're alternating skeins all the way down. Say this is just in the round, around. There's no, like, the neck is straight, like a flax jumper or something. So you're alternating skeins all the way down. You're doing some increases here. So you're fiddling around stitches either side of it. Say you slip. Say this is a 4-stitch. It's a 2-stitch pattern actually, but then you move some stuff. So say you were slipping. You got to here and you needed to slip. I would slip 4 stitches and maybe 1 more, you know, just to get past that. So the next time around, I can just work this bit, you know. So you can slip as many stitches or as little stitches as you want to fiddle around into the pattern. And then it got to the separating sleeves section. And a lot of people were asking, oh, how do I continue on the helical knitting if my slip stitches transition is on the sleeve and I'm taking those stitches off? What I say to that is essentially, if you're going to continue helical knitting all the way down, alternating skeins all the way down the sleeves, stop there and snip off that the yarn. Just stop it, cut it off, well, actually, yeah, if you're on that transition. This has happened to me and I've figured it out. I think I just basically stopped and I left the yarn kind of hanging, and then I put them all onto stitch holders and I continued knitting. So I stopped with one. Yeah, I stopped with the, so I was knitting, I came to the transition, I stopped 3 before, I stopped with that yarn and I cut off, I left about like a 6-inch tail, and I because I didn't want to be carrying around another ball of yarn onto that hand. I wanted to bring the ball back to the body. So I cut the yarn and I carried on with the other stitch until I got to the place where I needed to take the stitches off. Then I took the stitches off and I cast on, I cast on there, and I basically joined in the helical knitting wherever. It probably under the sleeve is probably the best bet. Go 1 or 2 rounds with one of the yarn, your main yarn, and then join in under the sleeve so you won't see it, the join. Although, to be honest, the join is just going to be woven in like a normal end. So if you weave it in properly, you can actually do it underneath the sleeve, join in under the sleeve on the next go round, and then you can use the end to actually tidy up the holes afterwards, which would be nice way to do it. So that's what I do. And then when I'm starting on the sleeve again, I will pick up, or I'll split splice the little strand that's off it and join on that yarn, and I'll start knitting again. So I'll have the 2 balls at one time. And on this side, I would just have one, I'd be picking up stitches and I'd just be knitting one, and I'd join in the yarn the same as I did this to start the helical knitting all the way down. So I think that's most of the questions that I get asked quite a lot about the helical knitting. So hopefully that answers a few. Yeah, if you've any specific questions that I haven't answered about helical knitting and you can't find the answer on the original helical knitting video, which I will put down in the description below, please do ask me. I have no problem answering questions if I can, but I cannot rewrite a pattern to include helical knitting into like a complex lace pattern. That's not gonna, I can't I can't do that for you. So yeah, that's that question. And that question was asked by Lilybets. So thanks so much, Lilybets. That's actually fantastic that I managed to answer that question, because I get asked that. Obviously I get asked those questions so much. So that was helical knitting, what works and what doesn't work, what it's good for and what it's not good for. So then Vivette, my friend Viv, hi Viv, she asks crafts that I haven't tried, like crafts that I would like to try in the future. And that's such an interesting question, because I honestly have, most of the crafts that I got into, I fell into, like I got into knitting because I started watching Mina on Facebook, and I was like, oh, that looks really nice. And then I started crocheting first. I started crocheting when everybody got pregnant. Everybody got pregnant in work. So that's when I started crocheting. And then, then I started knitting, and I wanted to kind of join in. And then I was landed with spinning. I got 3 bags of fleeces from a friend who's actually undergoing a little bit of health difficulties at the moment. So if you could spare a moment for the person who started me spinning, I'd really appreciate it, just a little minute. And then weaving, then I was more deliberate. I took a class on weaving and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I didn't know if I would or not. I thought it was far too complicated, but it's totally not. I really, do you know what? I really want to get better at sewing. I think sewing is the craft I really would love to get the hang of. I also am kind of obsessed with macrame. Really like the look of macrame. The cordage is different, the yarn quantities are different, and it's more kind of cotton. And I think I'd like to use it for more useful things like bags or hanging planters or something like that. Although I am coming around to the idea of hanging weaving art, which is quite lovely. What other crafts? Rug hooking. That seems really interesting. I think I'd like to try it. Seems fun. I love marbling art, and I think I'd like to try woodwork. That's everything. I'm a skill collector, Viv. This is a terrible question. I love all these. One thing I'm certain I'm certain at this moment in time I have no interest in is felting. I don't know, it seems so wrong. And like the feel of felted things stresses me out a tiny bit. Is that weird? Although I did see an incredible skirt in the Irish Fibre Crafters, which is a felted BFL, kind of grey BFL locks onto a skirt, and it was gorgeous. It had a silk kind of satin lining on it, which is really nice. But yeah, I've no real, I don't know, just felting and needle felting. I'm not really interested in those yet. I mean, I always never say never, but that's one thing I'm like, nah. Weird. I also have embroidery. I have embroidery kits, but I started trying it and then I was like, I don't know. But I think it's probably, there's a time in your life when different things suit you. And I love trying out different things. I love getting the opportunity to try out different things, but sometimes there's just no brain space there, unfortunately. I don't know where I am here now. What am I doing? Am I decreasing or increasing? I think I'll do a decrease. Sure, why not? There we go. So, so yeah, there's a couple of crafts that I would like to try, and a couple of crafts that it's probably easier to tell you the crafts that I'm less interested in. I am a printmaker. I went to art college. I did printmaking. I did bookbinding. I'd love to get back into bookbinding a little bit. But it's time. So yeah. Then, Lisbon Grav asked me, back to life stuff, what is my favorite place I've traveled so far? That's hard question to answer. I'm going to give you my top 3 because it's really, the thing is that I could never ever give you one place to go. The world is too big, too varied, too different, that there's no best place in this world to visit. There is none. There really isn't. And there's no worst place either, you know. There is experiences to be lived in every single place, every single meter in this world, you know. So I can't give you this is my favorite place. I have too many favorite places. I have so many, and that you can't compare different places in the world. I don't think you can. You can try. It's human nature to compare, but I don't think I can. But the first places that came to mind were Croatia, Thailand, and Tasmania. They were, and Ireland. That doesn't count. So those are the 3, like, when I read that question, I was like, oh, those are the first that came into my brain. Doesn't mean that they're the best places, but they're really, really interesting and fun and so different. So Croatia is a fascinating place. It's a fascinating country. We flew into Zadar, which is kind of on the north. Croatia is a country in Europe, which is... So Croatia is, I totally got it wrong the first time, so I'm doing this again. Croatia is on the Mediterranean Sea, but it's really over the far east side. It's across the water, you've got Italy, and across the top you've got Slovenia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, and then down below you've got a couple of countries down, and then you hit Greece. Yeah, it's a very salty sea because it's so far inland from the outside, from the Atlantic Ocean. So the sea is incredibly salty. So it has a lot of Italian influences and Greek influences. A lot of Italian influences, the food especially, very Italian. They have fabulous wines, seafoods, pasta dishes. And then they also have some Serbian influences with like foods, like big stroganoff, kind of potato-y based. And yeah. So the history of Croatia is extremely fraught. Like, I remember Croatia being on TV. I remember the bombing of Dubrovnik and all the fancy exotic yachts being bombed in the Serbian wars in 1993-94. The country is really pulling back now. It's a fascinating place to be. It's gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. It's right, like there's a huge coastline all the way down, and then there's this internal section. We didn't go into the internal section. We didn't go into Zagreb, into the center, which is the capital city. We kind of stayed on the coast. We rented a car and we stayed in little apartments all the way down. We just booked on booking.com every day, and we just decided we're going to stop here today. And we found some fabulous little villages. We went in June. I really recommend going in June because it's before their summer holidays, so it's really quiet and everything is really reasonably priced. Now it's the same price as Ireland, essentially. It's expensive. If you're expecting an Eastern European country to be cheap, it's not. It's a lot of tourists, and it's euro. Everything is in euro, which is great if you're a euro person. The people are the best. No, people are absolutely fabulous. They're so friendly. They're really funny, really open, fantastic English, the lot of them. Not all of them obviously, but like a lot of people that we worked with, a lot of people that were renting out the stuff and the hotels and the restaurants that we were going down the coast, which is touristy anyway. We got to a load of beautiful places. We hired a boat one day, went out to the islands. We found this little vineyard island, which you just drove in, you just parked up your boat, and there was a lad that came out. There was like 2 or 3 seats with umbrellas, and he was like, do you want to try our wine? Like, we just made it. Or like, you know, last year's wine or something. And I was like, yeah, yes. So it was fab. And I was like, what are the drinking boat driving laws? And Dad was like, it's fine. Yeah, they're really, really fascinating. It's just lovely. And then of course Dubrovnik itself, which is a really beautiful city. I highly recommend going. Expensive because it's a World Heritage Site, the internal part of the city. It's where Game of Thrones filmed most of the Red Keep, King's Landing. And I went on a Game of Thrones tour, which is a big time. Do it immediately. If you're there, you have to do it. It's so interesting. Yeah, the Game of Thrones crew, when they go down, they hire a lot of locals. So all the locals then guide these tours. So we had a woman who was the one of the costume designers and the dressers, and she was talking about all the costumes that she was putting together and how she absolutely loved King Joffrey. He's just Jack Gleeson, he's an Irish lad, but she basically had to watch him die like 6,000 times. It was the worst day of her life. So yeah, it's really, really fab. I love that place. Next place then was Thailand, and actually there was 2 places in Thailand which I loved. One was Khao Sok Lake, which is a dam that was, it was a lake formed by a hydroelectric dam, and we stayed in these like floating cabins, and it was absolutely amazing. Oh my god. And then the next place was the Elephant Sanctuary up in North Thailand. So Khao Sok Lake is down in the southern part of Thailand, and then Khao Sok Lake was in, and then the Elephant Sanctuary was in the top. And the Elephant Sanctuary is, you don't ride the elephants. It's all about you know, trying to rehabilitate them and mind them because they've been abused for so long. They also have a gorgeous amount of beautiful dogs there, and I stayed in a little cabin up there and it was fab. It was brilliant. One of my best experiences in Southeast Asia. And then Tasmania, which was fascinating. I stayed there for 2 months on my own in a hotel, as I was working down there as a locum radiographer, and I hired a car weekends and went off and discovered different places, went on tours, went out to the prison colony, Port Arthur. That was fascinating. Went out to Bruny Island, which is full of wildlife and penguins and seals, and that was really great. And then went up to the Bay of Fires, and it's just, the place is full of wildlife. It's the roadkill capital of the world. And it was really interesting to see how animals who literally just are not used to humans, because they've only been there for like, it's actually, Tasmania is one of the oldest European settlements in Australia, which is only about 300 years old, so it's not very old. But they did have, you know, obviously the indigenous population has been there for 60,000 years. But of course Europeans come and colonize, so that's that. But yeah, it was a fascinating place. I loved the entire island. Yeah, it was very interesting. It was cooler than the rest of Australia. It was very Irish temperatures. I went there during summer. I escaped Sydney heat and went there during the summer, so that was great. Yeah, I just loved it. And the Mona, the art museum down there in just outside Hobart, you get a ferry up. Brilliant, brilliant. So those are 3 places that I absolutely loved. But this world is, I try not to go back to the same place twice. The world is too big. It's too big. So unless I've got friends there or something, I'll always try and find somewhere new to visit, because this world is too small. It's too big to keep going back to the same place. You know what I mean? I find anyway. Yeah. So back to a yarny question then. My thought process behind my de-stash. Oh, Melinda from the Yarn to Woman podcast asked me this. And this is very interesting. For a long time, I had been nervous about de-stashing. I don't know why. I think I just had very emotional connections to all of my yarn, because a lot of it had been bought when I was traveling back from Tasmania to Ireland. I bought a lot of yarn when I was in Canada, when I was in New York. I bought a lot of yarn as well. And then when I came to Edinburgh for the first time, I bought a ton of yarn. And it was all kind of souvenir yarn. And to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I bought was really impulse. I love it. I don't have a stash. I'm going back home. I'm going to finally have a place to keep it all. I'm just going to buy everything. And I didn't make kind of sensible choices that made any sense for my colour senses. So I was really interested when I was going through all of my yarn. I threw it all out and I was like, there was like piles of absolutely yes, maybe this has a project in mind, and then no. And then gifts. So gifts are tricky. I do have a few of my gifts that I received in my de-stash, but then a lot more of them I was like, oh, I can't sell these. Like, they've been given to me. Like, I can't sell them. You know, I felt weird about that. So, but a lot of them are single skeins, which I'm not sure what to do with, and I just have so much yarn that it's giving me anxiety, because I'm not a fast knitter and I'm sort of running out a bit of, like, I feel like I need to simplify a little bit. I think it just got a little bit out of hand, and I actually haven't been in this room for 6 months, I'd say, properly, like, to enjoy my time in this room, because there's just so much stuff and it's not comfortable, you know. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to pull everything out and really figure out what I definitely is my absolute favorites. I did a bit of a Marie Kondo on it. We are coming to a point in our lives where things are getting expensive. Like we've got a wedding to pay for, we're trying to save for a deposit on a house, and all the money that I want to kind of spend on fun things, I have to be careful of, because the banks are going to be looking at my bank records and James's bank records, and we're going to be kind of heavily scrutinized for where we spend our money. I've been looking a lot more into kind of, such an adult thing, but like where our money goes, because we work so hard and it just seems like, where is it going? Where is it all going? So I decided to, instead of spending money on yarn, I was going to sell a lot of yarn that I was never going to knit, especially in funny colors. Like I bought a huge amount of browns and purples, and like I love this mustardy color. I'm gonna keep this color, but like proper browns, I'm like, okay, not sure, you know. I just wasn't in love with it. So yeah, and some single skeins that I do love, but I just know that I've knit so many hats. I never wear hats, you know. So it's better to go to someone who does knit hats, or who does knit cowls, or who does want to knit, like who knits with thicker yarn than I do. So yeah, and single skeins of DK, or single skeins of Aran, or single skeins of, you know, fabulous for hats. And I used to make that excuse to buy them. Oh, I'm gonna make a hat. I never wear them. So, but I say that now, and I really enjoy making hats because they're small and they're handy. But you know, I've got too many DK weights, so, and I can dye my own now, so I can sell them on and hopefully to someone who will use them, someone who'll make use of them a little bit more. So I also think that, you know, when I go to shows, I see something, I love it, I love the person who's selling it, I love the story behind the person who's selling it, and I buy it to support that person, you know, I'd buy it to support their business. I have it, I love it, it's given me such joy to buy it, it's given me such joy to put it up in my stash or put it up on my wall, and but I'm probably not going to use it, so I have got my joy out of that skein of yarn, so you know, I can just let it go into the world, like Marie Kondo, you know. Thank you for all you've given me, all of the happiness of the squishing yarn that you've given me. And I'm going to let this go to someone who will use it now, someone who will experience the joy as well another time. So that's my thought process behind destarting. I think it's going to be a regular event. It's really freeing. It's wonderful. I loved it. I loved it. And I raised so much money and that's gone straight towards my cake, my wedding cake. So, and also I did get some patterns. See, so that money is going back into lots of different things, you know, so it's just cash flow. So it's really nice to have that, to free up some cash flow in there. Yeah. Speaking of the wedding, so Akira, the Knitting Annihilator, asked me, how did my fiance propose? So James is a big romantic, but in theory, not in action. So like we met 5 months before I left for Australia. I'd booked my tickets a month before I met him. And then he followed me out to Australia, like such a romantic. But like, that's all I ever wanted in life, was just someone to follow me and do what I wanted. Like, that's very simple. It's not hard. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that I found him, and it's a miracle that he wanted to hang around and follow me out. But sure, we had a great time, and he's not scared away, and he asked me anyway. So but I kind of, marriage is a bit scary. It's a little bit scary, you know. It's a big commitment and it's a big deal, So I actually told him when he moved out to Australia, I was like, you're not allowed to just ask me to marry you. This is crazy. Because it was a big, you know, he was moving to Australia after just knowing me for 5 months. Like, I don't know. To me, that seems, I'm very cautious. I'm a very cautious person. It may not seem like it, but I do like to have things planned. And I think I'm not so cautious when it comes to myself, but I'm cautious when it comes to other people. Maybe I just don't trust them. I don't know. But I was really nervous that James was just going to pop the question after 5 months of going out. I was like, oh. So I told him, you're not allowed to ask me until I say that it's okay to ask me. Because you don't want to get a no, do you? And he was like, okay. So yeah, we traveled together. We worked quite well together. We came home. He came back to Ireland. Actually, it was his idea to come back to Ireland. We moved in together into a proper house with a craft room. He puts up with my yarn everywhere. And so kind of at the start of the year, I was like, I'd probably say yeah. I said to him, so romantic. And then, yeah, and he's usually cannot keep a secret, this boy. He's just useless. I love him because I don't like secrets, so that's fine. I don't like being surprised by things. So yeah, he was, what am I doing here? So basically he kept getting these secret parcels from his mother, and he would like squirrel them away all secretive, and I'm like, he's like, stop looking, and I'm like, okay, you're being a bit obvious but cute. Yeah, so, and then he blurted out about a week before or 2 weeks before we were going to Edinburgh for the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. He blurted out, he's like, I'm gonna ask you in Edinburgh, and I was like, oh, fuck's sake. And then we were in our flat. It was St. Patrick's Day. I think we flew over the day before St. Patrick's Day. And on St. Patrick's night, we were going to go out to dinner. And, but he lasted until lunchtime. And he was sitting there. We were sitting on the couch just having a cup of tea after getting in or something. I think we'd only just arrived. Or maybe it was the day, next day anyway. It was St. Patrick's Day. And we were on the couch together, and I had my knitting, and he was like, Grace, and I'm like, this is happening now. Is it happening now? He was like, shh, let me do it now. And I was like, okay. And it was perfect. It was perfect. It was intimate. It was nobody else's business, and it was really lovely, and it was just right for us. And I said yes, and I was trying not to say it because I was vlogging, you see, and I was vlogging the entire trip, and I was like, fuck, what am I gonna do? Like, what do I do? I don't want to. I kind of wanted to keep it just to us for a little while, and then James was like, are you gonna tell everybody? Are you gonna tell everybody? Are you gonna tell everybody? And of course, because like he'd effectively like won me or whatever, that he wanted everybody to know, which is really nice. So yeah, we announced it kind of on the vlogs, and then I kind of kept it quiet again. But yeah, because I just didn't want to. It's a very private thing, but it's also a very public thing. It's a funny one, isn't it? So James gave me one of his grandmother's going out rings, which it was a lovely ring. It was very, very pretty. It was kind of adjustable, so you know it would have fit me either way. So it was like one of those adjustable rings from like Debenhams or somewhere, but it was very pretty, and it had this like deep purple kind of, this kind of color ring, or maybe this kind of color ring, garnety, purpley, beautiful, stunning, with 2 rings on either side. I'll put up a picture here. Unfortunately, on the last day, the center stone came out, and as I was walking, as myself and Mina were walking up and down, up one little street, the stone came out, and it was a bit upsetting. so we still haven't fixed that. However, about 2 weeks later we were up in Dublin and we picked out the final ring, which is this little bad boy. I'll turn it around so you can see because it focuses much better on the other side. So this is the final ring. It's white gold with 2 diamonds and a moissanite, and it's a beautiful setting. It's made by an Irish designer. I can't remember the name of the Irish designer at the moment. So it was going to take about a week to get resized, but James wasn't going back up to Dublin for another 2 weeks, so I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So the next Saturday I was going up to, I think I was up in the Irish Fibre Crafters or something. I was going for the day anyway, and James had to get up really early because he was going down to Waterford, which is in the southeast. Dublin is kind of directly east, maybe a little bit northeast. And I arrived home at about 5 o'clock, and James had arrived about 10 minutes before me, and he came into the kitchen and he had a box in his hand, and I was like, what? He had got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, drove up to Dublin to get the ring early, to get the ring when it was ready, and then went down and down to, so he basically drove another, 500 kilometers. Which is the sweetest thing. Maybe 500 kilometers, I'm not sure, but yeah, he's a cutie, isn't he cute? So yeah, we're getting married in September 2020. Not going to give you the date. But yeah, we've got our venue booked, and we've got our photographer, and that's it. So I do want to make a lot for the wedding, but I have ideas in my head. I don't know how realistic they're going to be now at all, but I'd love to make something. I've been looking at Marina Skua. Her wedding dress was a beautiful linen. Oh, it's gorgeous. I love it. I'd love to use Irish linen. And then I'd love to knit a kind of like a bolero with flutter sleeves with beads. Little sweetheart neckline. I'm not sure. Maybe something like that. Yeah, so it's all a bit daunting. It's all a bit expensive. But anyway, I'm marrying James, and that's the best thing. So yeah, we're together. We just had our 4-year anniversary, so we're together 3.5 years before we got engaged, and we'll be together 5 years when we get married. So that's pretty good going. Yeah, so I don't know if y'all needed to know all of that, but there you go. There was a question about it, so I answered it. Yeah, so I think I'm actually going to leave it there so I've done 3 questions about knitting and then 3 questions about life. If you've got any more questions, I'd love to answer them. Just down below in the comments, you can ask them there, or you can go over to my Ravelry thread called Ask Me Anything. It's the Babbles Travelling Yarns Ravelry thread. If you're not subscribed, please do give me a little thumbs up. If you fancy it, helps other people find the podcast, and I really appreciate it. The podcast is it's a lovely little income stream for me now. I have ads on from the YouTube ads, and I really thank every single one of you for clicking and watching me, because that's I think I get about 2 cents for every view. But it adds up, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It goes towards my dangerous yarn habit, and it helps me with my small little yarny business, and I hope you get some joy out of it, out of my silly little life. Silly little yarny life. and my little chats about everything. So I hope you enjoyed it. That was kind of interesting for me to do anyway. Really fun. I don't know if I suppose you did learn a little bit about helical knitting and my personal life. Oh, one more question. Becky H123123 asked me my favorite pizza toppings. Mushrooms. Vegan cheeses. And Milano's do incredible pizzas. Incredible. There's one that has like artichoke hearts and olives. Oh, it's delicious. So good. So yeah, anything from the vegan Milano's range, or actually in England it's not Milano's, it's Pizza Express. Amazing. Number one. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. I'll see you next week. Bye.